when I was doing some work. But John Campea came out and said that he had talked to, I guess, 3 different people who had seen the movie, and they all said it was great. And even during the Jimmy Kimmel appearance, it was really interesting because Jimmy was giving J.J. Abrams a hard time because J.J. didn't invite him to the private screening that I guess they had for close friends. And then Jimmy Kimmel said, well, I've talked to a friend of mine, and I think he actually said a mutual friend, who has seen the movie and said it was great. And you could see J.J. Abrams kind of squirming in his chair. It was pretty funny. Daisy Ridley was there along with John Boyega and Adam Driver and Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford on the Jimmy Kimmel Show. It was interesting. I didn't find it all that great. They did a goofy game show with a kid that was a Star Wars expert that was just really embarrassing, and I wasn't all that thrilled by. You know, I more wanted to hear them talk about the movie, and they didn't do a whole lot of that. But Daisy Ridley's been making the rounds, the media rounds and interview rounds, and in the January 2016 issue of Glamour magazine, there's some interesting quotes that she had. She said that she was petrified. I thought I was going to have a panic attack the first day. JJ, he probably doesn't remember telling me that my performance was wooden. And this was my first day, and I honestly wanted to die. I thought I was going to cry. I couldn't breathe. She also went on to say that it's so nice that people are so excited about it, but people are getting tattoos of my face already. And I'm like, you don't even know what Rey is in the story. It seems insane to me. And then she goes on to say, I haven't seen the film yet. I kind of want to. I kind of don't. Steven Spielberg's seen it 3 times, as he told me when I met him. And on whether the Disney machine has control over her, she says that my experience has been incredible. I felt supported and respected the whole way through. I've not been told to do anything. My Instagram has not been, what's it called? They keep tabs on it. Yeah, it's not been monitored. So, I mean, but again, they've probably got their own, sort of marching orders and non-disclosure agreements. And I don't know if I've mentioned this on a previous podcast, but I'm probably most curious to see her performance in the film. Not just because she's the protagonist, although I'm getting more excited now for John Boyega's character, just based off of what we've seen now in some trailers. She just seems really dynamic and interesting to me. And she has one of those, for as weird as it sounds, she has one of those faces that has, like, she looks like different people depending on her facial expression. When you see Daisy Ridley doing press interviews with this huge smile on her face, she doesn't look like her character. And then you see some shots from the trailers, and she has a really dynamic face, and I think it's really going to lend itself to the movie and making it different and unique. I honestly believe it's one of the reasons why they chose her, because she just has a wide range of emotions that she can give. I mean, when you compare her to a John Boyega, if you will. I think Adam Driver's a lot like that, too. I just don't know how much we're going to see. I know we'll see him out of the mask during the movie at some point. I just don't know how much of him that we'll end up seeing out of the mask. All right, so let's go here real quick. I want to talk Rebels. I don't talk Rebels a lot on the show. I watch Rebels. This season's been okay. I'm kind of with a lot of other people that, some of the episodes seemed a little lacking. There's more episodes this season than there have been in seasons in the first season. There's way more episodes, I think like double the amount of episodes in this season. So because of that, they can afford to do some filler shows. And I felt like some of them been kind of stale in that regard. And I guess the question would be, do you want, fewer shows that are more sort of, main thread storyline driven, or do you want a larger season and get some filler episodes? And of course, it's more Star Wars, so I'd rather have a larger season and some filler episodes. However, this one that just aired on Wednesday was spectacular. The former clone trooper Rex and Kanan having to go aboard the Star Destroyer that can create this gravity well that can pull ships out of hyperspace, and the two of them having to get dressed up as stormtroopers and get on the Star Destroyer with Chopper to get and rescue Ezra, it just felt like Star Wars. I mean, in so many different ways. Especially, it made me want to watch A New Hope, and it got me excited to watching it because it's on my schedule next week. It got me excited to watch it next week for that very reason, because the show itself is much simpler, right down to the animation. If you've ever watched a Rebels and then gone and watched a Clone Wars, there is a very distinct difference in the amount of money that was spent on Rebels and the amount of money that was spent on Clone Wars. Clone Wars had a much, much bigger budget, was a much bigger show. But that gives you, in my opinion, it gives the viewer a much more original trilogy feel. This one, because of them getting dressed up as stormtroopers and having to go rescue somebody from an Imperial fortress, in this case, it's this giant, I can't remember the name of it, but this giant Star Destroyer. And then Ezra wielding the lightsaber and coming into his own. It felt like something that was right from A New Hope in its vibe and its style and its simplicity. And that's what got me thinking about Rogue One. If Rogue One can... Because Star Wars The Force Awakens is going to be, in my opinion, an almost perfect mashup of the prequel trilogy in terms of technology, in terms of action, camera angles, and it's going to be the perfect matchup between the prequels and then the original trilogy in terms of story, legacy, lived-in universe, the Force. I really do feel that's what The Force Awakens is going to be. I think Rogue One, I'm interested in it to see how much it ends up feeling like A New Hope. I mean, that's going to be a difficult task for Gareth Edwards, who's directing it, to do, if that is indeed what they're trying to do. It being an anthology film or a Star Wars story, as they're calling it, certainly affords to give them the latitude to not have to make it completely tie in terms of feel and aesthetic to the original movie. But man, it's got a great opportunity to do that. And watching Rebels over the weekend just got me thinking, dude, if Rogue One can tap in to the way that Star Wars A New Hope feels, because it feels different. All the movies feel different. I think the prequels all kind of feel the same. And for a lot of people, that's bad. But the prequels all kind of feel the same. But the original trilogy, because of the fact they use different directors, they all have kind of a different vibe to them. And Rebels really felt like A New Hope. If Rogue One fits in well and is in the way they shoot it and in terms of pacing and style and sort of simplicity again, it could be, it kind of could be a sleeping giant in terms of fandom. Again, I think it's going to be limiting and not reaching the younger audience that The Force Awakens does. But I think for us old timers, no, but for those of us, of the older generations, who, saw A New Hope actually in the theater as a little kid, this movie has the opportunity to, if The Force Awakens takes us back to our youth, imagine what Rogue One can do if it ends up feeling like A New Hope, right? How cool would that be? I don't think the hype leading up to it next year is going to be nearly as big. I think it'll largely depend on how successful The Force Awakens is, and I have no doubt it's going to be hugely successful. But at the same time, because it's not a saga movie and it's telling a story of stealing the Death Star plans, they're going to have to really work on the marketing of how do we bring people into the mythology standpoint. And I think it's going to have to be more of a straight up marketing. I think they're going to have to go with a lot of visuals and getting people excited about the story and what it looks like and the new characters, because you don't have the common thread going in Rogue One of, Skywalker lineage and, You're probably not going to see any of the original trilogy cast members being played young in the film. You might get Maz Kanata, though, right? There's a possibility there. And I'm wondering, and I've got one more something kind of special and fun to play for you before we wrap the podcast up today. But I'm wondering if they'll try to tie into Rogue One with Maz Kanata to The Force Awakens, if she actually ends up being in the film. I think that'll be that'll be pretty interesting. Plus, there's some talk about whether or not she actually might turn up in Rebels. All right, so before we wrap the podcast up, a couple of things. They did release the track listing for the movie. I'm not going to read the tracks off, so I'm not going to freak anybody out, so you don't got to bolt. But the track listing for the soundtrack came out, and again, it kind of confirms everything. There's no Qui-Gon's noble end, which ruined the Qui-Gon death. Spoiler alert. Ruined the Qui-Gon death for me. I still remember the store that I was in when I bought the soundtrack to The Phantom Menace, and I saw the track listing, and it said Qui-Gon's noble end, and I go, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I just found out that Qui-Gon died on the back of this CD. They didn't do that with this one, thankfully. It did confirm quite a few of the things that we were speculating on just as fans. So it's out there on the internet. They've pulled it down from Amazon. That's where it was a French website that put it up there. But it's out there if you want to go find it for yourself. All right, so this is kind of fun. I got just enough time to sneak this in. This is a live segment of my show from 2012 on Halloween Day, my radio show, of me talking about Disney buying Star Wars. It sounds funny because I'm wearing a Clone Trooper helmet. That was the costume that I wore for Halloween. Here is the audio of me talking about Disney buying Star Wars on my radio show. Back to the show. Happy Halloween. We're going to get back into election items coming up. We've got some new polling numbers to share with you. Also, the possibility that more White House emails may have been released in regards to Benghazi is getting a little bit more traction.
My name's Rex. You'll call me Captain or Sir.
Did you hear the news yesterday, though? Disney bought Lucasfilm for $4 billion.
That is just awesome in so many ways.
It was actually $4.05 billion. We're not sure where the .05 came into play.
Explosives are in place, sir.
They've acquired George Lucas's Lucasfilm Limited. That includes rights to the Star Wars franchise that will now continue on. The companies have targeted a 2015 release for Star Wars Episodes 7, 8, and 9.
Hands above your head.
To follow the long-term plan to release new features every 2 or 3 years. The last Star Wars movie was 2005's Revenge of the Sith. The stock and transaction is worth an estimated $4.05 billion. And again, we think that $0.5 billion is going to either Jenny Craig or Weight Watchers for Men for George Lucas. He's eating a little too many Jawa dogs.
I'll read you, General.
As for the new Star Wars installments, the company said Lucasfilm's Kathleen Kennedy will be executive producer of Episode 7 and any additional Star Wars movies.
Look sharp, rookies.
Lucas would serve as creative consultant, but for the most part, they're going to get new directors, and I guess they're already in the writing process for the new movies. Lucas handed them treatments for Episodes 7, 8, and 9 already. He already had those mapped out, but he said pretty much he's going to become a fan and step back.
The mission always comes first, sir.
That's too great, John.
Yeah. No indication on where the story would pick up. Technically, it would be after Return of the Jedi.
Use your right.
So you can go and watch that online if you care. It's on my YouTube page. So there you go. But there's some bad jokes in there. I'm usually a lot funnier on my show. Have yourself a fantastic week. I hope you are enjoying your own personal journey to The Force Awakens. That was episode number 29 of the My Nerd World Star Wars podcast. Until next week, may the Force be with you always.